بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. شكرا دكتور مجتبى. Thank you very much. Let's start with the critical approaches to translation. Actually, when doing translation, I've found that certain translations sometimes regarded as mistranslations, but in different contexts they are fit or they are successful to some extent. So between this and that, I found that this is a kind of ideologically accepted or ideologically unaccepted. So the matter is about the ideology of either the translator or the audience of the target language. It means the mediation between the source and target language to a successful communication. Now, it's all about the ideology, which is referred as criticality or critical in terms of language and discourse. Now, let's start with the idea of being critical. Criticality as a concept, which is founded in the Frankfurt School of Philosophy by certain philosophers, which deals with the literary criticism and language in general. It deals with the ideological manifestations of language, such as power, inequalities, discrimination, gender, and every belief that the language user tries to convey by whatsoever means to the listeners and the hearers. Of course, this wasn't first adopted or used by linguisticians or literary criticism. It's all about the society and social practices. However, later on, it was greatly and highly adopted by the discourse analysts as a broad strategy and method to be used in the linguistic analysis. And nowadays, it's like a discipline, a separate discipline that deals with almost all the several branches of linguistics. Of course, this was pioneered by very eminent linguistic scholars or linguisticians such as Verklau, Wodak, Van Dyck, and lately Van Leuven. Each of these scholars has presented a certain set of approaches to deal with the discourse analysis in terms of criticality. Then, since the translation is a very interconnected subdiscipline to linguistics, then there must be some kind of give and take in terms of theories and approaches of application that serve the translation process. So, following the functionalism of Halliday, the functional grammar of Halliday, of course, language is viewed as a social practice, as a social activity, then that the language user could practice or exercise just like any other social activities. So, according to this, translation is regarded as one of these social activities that is related to language, or the social activity where language is involved. So, social activities, according to Halliday, must be dealt with certain contextual factors, following the anthropologist Malinowski's types of context. So, a translation here must represent an ideology of certain kind, following Sakai. So what translators or interpreters do in this regard? So they are here like the mediator between the language and the ideology it represents. The language and the ideology it presents. So, but we have to keep in mind that critical does not mean mistranslation. When saying this is critical, we do not mean it is translated successfully or unsuccessfully in certain context. No, it depends. The whole matter depends on the criticality, the ideological translation, whether the translator or the interpreter conveys the idea, the communication successfully or unsuccessfully in terms of ideology. Why? Because there are two languages, which means two communities, which means the two ideologies, or at least different ideologies, and the translator here is required to be like a mediator, which is the successful mediator, revealing all the aspects of different orientations of each cultures. By each cultures, we mean the cultures where the source language and target language belong all together. So one of these strategies is to domesticate foreign cultures. How to domesticate foreign cultures? To fuse these two or more cultures into one, bring them together, find out the commonalities between these two cultures in order to give the successful successful code of language to be translated, and finally to set the local cultural hegemonies through the challenges of translation, to melt down all the hegemonies, the powers, the social inequalities into a successful code of a translation whatsoever it takes from the translator. So what can the translator or the translation process in general do in terms of criticality? So it could minoritize, it could marginalize, it could sectarianize, it could politicize, it could hegemonize, it could do whatever ideology that the text carries. Now, if the source text tries to minoritize certain through certain ideologies, then the translator, to be honest, carrier transferer, should find out the way how to minoritize things, how to marginalize things. This is especially with the race context that talk about racism and ethnic issues. Again, the same thing with sectarianism. Now, there must be some kind of discrimination in terms of translation, as we'll see in the examples. The same thing goes with the politics. How to put things into the political scene is a kind of ideology again, and the translator or interpreter must take this into account. And finally, how to reveal the power relation, the hegemony, the power, the dominance, and so on and so forth, is again a very critical or very crucial aspect that must be taken into account by the translator. Now let's go to certain examples taken from different contexts where criticality or critical translation is highly considered. Now, in terms of the religious critical translation, now here is the sentence taken from the English text, the English language as a source text. Muhammad was an Arab religious, social and political leader and the founder of Islam. Now, to be translated critically, all these translations, these 4 translations are accepted. However, they are accepted to the degree of the critical translation or of the ideological manifestations. Now, if we say the first one, كان محمد صلى الله عليه وآله, it will indicate something socially known that the person, the translator, or at least the target language, the target audience, the target language audience belongs to certain sects of the religion of Islam. If we talk about the second one, كان محمد صلى الله عليه وعلى صحبه وعلى آله, and so on and so forth, this is going to be taken as some kind of moderate other sect. If we say sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, again it will be considered as an ideology of a certain sect. And if we say kana Muhammad Saad, which means the highly moderate way of including all the sects of the religion of Islam all together, to be impartial in this matter. The same example goes with the this one, which is كان الخليفة الرابع الإمام علي عليه السلام. Now this is taken from the Arabic source language, and look how it was translated. The 4th caliph Ali was, there is no alayhi salam, there is no radiyallahu anhu, there is no anything. Why? Because it doesn't matter to the target language as a social a social activity. They don't care they don't know this person unless they are identified by the ideology they have or they're committed to. The second example is taken from the political context. How the translation can be critically translated or critically done in terms of the political context, and this is very clear nowadays. Now look at this example taken from the English language as a source language. ISIS declared a caliphate that stretches across eastern Syria and much of the northern and western Iraq. Now, here the translators, depending on certain ideological motives and drives, they try to translate in the way that serves their own ideologies and tendencies. Now the first one is أعلنت الدولة الإسلامية خلافتها التي تمتد, etc. And this reflects certain ideology, of course. The second one, أعلن تنظيم الدولة الإسلامية الخلافة التي تمتد, and so on and so on. So تنظيم الدولة الإسلامية, and this lexical signaling indicates that the ideology of the media or of the translator or of the source language, target language audience. Okay, and the third one, أعلنت عصابات داعش الإرهابية زعامتها. There is no خلافة because there is no need to say خلافة. They are, ideologically speaking, they are not دولة, they are not a state, they are not an organization, and there is no way ever to have the caliphate. Okay, so that's why it is lexically signaled as a gang and a terrorist gang, and then leadership or seizure on certain places. And the second one, again taken from the English language as a source text, popular mobilization forces have declared victory over ISIS. Now here again the same issue. وقد أعلنت قوات الحشد الشعبي النصر على داعش الإرهابي. This translation, of course, it is not mistranslated. It is translated and successfully to some extent to at least those whose ideology accepts this translation successfully, and they feel proud of this translation. The second one, وقد أعلنت قوات الحشد الشعبي النصر على تنظيم الدولة الإسلامية. Again, this is a kind of moderate translation to some extent to satisfy certain parties from both sides. And the third one, وقد أعلنت ميليشيا الحشد الشعبي التغلب على تنظيمات الدولة الإسلامية. And this is again very ideological because it represents another ideology and another. So the first translation represents certain stance, the second one again certain stance, and the third one a certain stance as well. And these three different stances, three stances are very different according to the ideological manifestations of both, or at least one of either translator or the source language. Target language audience. If we take from the cultural critical translation, we will have these examples. For example, in Arabic we say لن أدعك تخرج دون الصلاة والعشاء هنا. Now, if we translate this as I will not let you go without having dinner and offering your prayer here, this is some kind of weird to the target culture, because they don't have such an ideology at all, a cultural ideology. Neither the second translation, you must have dinner, and must is a very 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 impolite modal verb, especially in the formal situations, and although we have it in Arabic as the most generous situation, however in the target language it's critically and ideologically unacceptable at all. If the third one, I insist to invite you to have, and so on and so forth, then this could be acceptable to certain extent. Again, why? Because the ideology or the social norms of the English language as a target language culture can be accepted to some extent. The opposite thing, if we take the second example, put yourself in my shoes. This is taken from the English language as a source language. Now, if we try to translate it into Arabic, we must mediate it into the Arabic language. Why? Because we don't have such a literal meaning. We have such a functional translation. We can say ضع نفسك مكاني, not ضع نفسك in my في حذائي, because it will be culturally and ideologically very very unacceptable. The same thing goes with with it's raining cats and dogs. إنها تمطر كأفها. Again, this translation must be functional and pragmatic one. And the third one, which is I'll keep it under my hat, again the same thing is applicable here. Gender translation. Here again a very common and popular concept in the critical studies, which is the gender translation. Of course, if we take this example taken from the Arabic language as a source text, يجب الذهاب إلى الطبيبة الحاذقة في هذا المجال. Now, if we deal with this in translating it to the English language, we wouldn't care to the sex of the doctor, whether male or female. Why? Because they don't care for these differences that we do care a lot. So it could be you should go to the expert doctor in the field. There is no she doctor or female doctor. Or you should see the skilled she doctor in the field. Now here the discrimination starts. Or you should see the skilled female doctor in the field. Again, the discrimination is very obvious and it's very clear. The second one, على المتقدم جلب أوراقه الثبوتية, and this is taken from Arabic, of course, as a text language, as a source text. Now, the translation could be as follows: the applicant should bring his or her transcripts. Now here, this is a moderate kind of ideology, trying to bring the two sexes together. The second one, the applicant should bring his transcripts. Now this is mostly done by the male translators, because the Arabic language highly depends on masculinity. The third one, which is the applicant should bring her transcript. This one, again, must have been translated by a female translator. Why? Because we can see the discrimination in terms of gender. And the fourth one, the applicant should bring the transcripts, and this is mostly done by one variety of the English language. They're trying to bring that to be moderate, at least, to bring the two sexes together. So the translator here tries to be more as a mediator, according to his or her, or at least to the target language audience. The last example, which is taken from Status translation. Again, Status is one of the common examples in the ideological studies or criticality. Now here, this one taking from the English, the outstanding Muslim scholar Sayyid Ali Sistani. Now in our translation, we would never translate the literal meaning. We would never say الرجل الديني المعروف السيد السيستاني. Of course not. We will say المرجع الديني الأعلى السيد علي السيستاني دام. Why? Because in order to satisfy the audience, in order to give a satisfactory translation and successful one ideologically, so we will have this translation. The opposite thing, this is the second one taken from the Arabic language. قال الحبر العلامة والفهم الفهامة فريد عصره وعالم زمانه الإمام so and so and so. So it is highly eloquent and exaggerated, as in fact. Again, the translation is going to be the same. The outstanding Muslim scholar. Why? Because they wouldn't care to all these titles. They don't care to the ideological manifestation of this figure. Okay, so what the translator tries to do here is to insert the criticality, the ideology, the ideological manifestations in order to give such critical, such a successful and satisfactory translations. So that's all from me. In the end, I can say we cannot take ourselves out of the critical or ideological box in the society, in whatever society we live in. That's all from me. Thank you very much. I'm waiting the comments and questions.